Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Coming to you live in Technicolor from the beautiful Hollywood Hills, California. The show where the total retail price of their advice is $0. This is Timelines Talks! Featuring guest musical performers, Metallica frontman, oh my, it's Stars and Garters. Also featuring, hey buddy, you're a tier 9. Look out, it's Automaton 2000. And now, from Spreadsheet City, here's your host, Captain Idol.
Yes, everyone, welcome to Timelines Talks. It's the show where us three sitting here every week talking, hopefully every week from now, talking about all things from Star Trek Timelines. This week on the show, we will be catching up, discussing about last week's event. We will be talking about deals that are happening, the Tuesday pack, next episode, and a few special... We've even got a monologue tonight from dear old Automaton here. So, yes, welcome to Auto and to Stars and Garters. How you guys doing? Which side are you? This side, I think.
No, this side. Well.
How are we?
I've heard that intro like 5 or 6 times now. I'm like, just can't stop smiling every time.
That was the first time I've seen it. That's some production value. I'm glad I was surprised.
I think because the story of it is, Auto, you sent me the you sent me your voiceover, and I just immediately thought, yeah, game show, we've got to do this.
Yeah.
But yeah, so welcome everybody. So first on the show tonight, we are going to make a correction. Unfortunately, a long-time error in the big book has been, we've been getting our Zals mixed up. So
it's actually still in there too.
It is still in there, is yet to be corrected. So Zal Ambassador is in fact not the same Ozal from Drive. They are two different characters. So I think the blurb in Zal Ambassadors refers to his, so the "Go Racers Go" line is not entirely accurate.
Don't worry, we'll just change it to +1 diplomat and then it'll be accurate.
Put him up a tier for the consideration.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's talk about the previous event, because now we've moved to a Wednesdays. We'll probably won't do that in future, but we can now cover it since we're on a Tuesday last time. So, previous event, we had Delta Fly Kim and Bridal Keiko, which we didn't discuss in depth in their stats. So let's have a chat about, and let me bring up the stats. Oh, hang on. Sorry, I'm still getting used to this. Let's bring up the scanner. Scanner is on. Let's talk about... Look at that. Delta Fly Kim. What do we think about him, guys?
I was very much down on him. I'm not going to lie. I think I originally pitched him at like 6 or 7 or 8, and I think Auto had to talk me up to a 6. Just because he didn't look very impressive to me, but you've been playing him on your ult, and I think you were quite excited to get him just because on a newer account, he'll be quite a big boon, no?
Yeah, actually, so I'm on a fresh account now. I'm a habitual re-roller because I play a lot of RPGs, ARPGs, and you get your one character up to a high level and get all the fancy items, and then you start a new one so you can play all the different archetypes. So I think this is my 4th account. So yeah, I really busted my hump for Kim. I think I ended up on Friday or Monday morning with 60 crowns in the bank, and they knew for Kim. So happy enough with him. I mean, he's nothing special, but stats are quite solid for a new player. He's great, and for an established player, you have another event piece to thaw. So
yeah, I suppose when it comes down to it, I'd rather have him than Teresian Kim. But you know,
yes. I think it also does nice to have that aesthetic bridge crew with the 3 Delta Flyers and Irina. It sort of completes a little set, as it were.
Yeah. Don't forget Ambassador Zal.
And well, Ozal now. Yeah. I think we're gonna have to request TP for that, aren't we? Mm-hmm. Okay, let's move on to... We won't spend too long on these two because it's last week. Let's talk about Bride Keiko briefly. Not quite par Wraith to Skiller.
I think I did actually throw out the name Lokek Sato on that stream, and that was a predictive thing. It's like I was not off base. I was very much not off base. I actually have her at 1 out of 5 because I'm sitting on a bank of like about 50k Chronotons, and I was like, screw it, why not? I need someone to equip, and it'll be helpful for the rest of my people in my fleet in this event. She is a Dipsai 2-skiller, and that's about all I really have saved for about, apart from the instant damage, which we're going to get into a little bit later on in the show. But for the right people who haven't been, getting their options in, with someone like Garth, for example, she's a good slot in.
And especially with something we'll talk about later, like you say, with the instant damage, I think we'll cover that later. But there is something, with the timing with that, there is something to it. Okay, so that's previous event. I think it was quite a modest event itself. So it was sort of in the mid to low range for finishers. I think a lot of people are still sort of saving their money on it.
Very, very low. I managed to squeeze in at I think about 900, and I was not very far off of thresholds. People did not want but I think people probably wanted Delta Flykin more than they wanted Bridal Cake, I'll be honest.
I think it was a 130.
We've had a ton of faction events recently. I think full faction has been like 6 out of the last 9 or 10. I don't know. Someone posted it somewhere, but there's been a lot of faction action. So
well, it's a good thing that half of them have been really bad crew.
I think, like we said last week, people do save for the mega, and they will, take their time on these sort of midweek events, unless it is someone a bit more stunning. Let's move on, and I'll just remove Bride Cake. We'll leave the scanner up for now. I haven't got a picture, but let's talk about the Phlox offer that happened recently for the 1,500 dilithium, and how it's a bit more unique to your average offer. Compared to others. So for those that have missed it or didn't know, there was a Happy Birthday John Billingsley pack for 1,500 dilithium that gave you a straight behold choice between Reverend Phlox, Phlox Au Naturel, and Defensive Phlox. And this was a one-time, although that wasn't too clear, it was a one-time straight off behold choice between the three. And in my opinion, that was actually quite a good thing. Being able to actually have the choice for... being actually have the choice. Sorry, we're getting pings here. Actually have the choice of crew between that for that sort of price, for the price of say 2 beholds where you might get nothing. I think that was quite a positive step.
Yeah, no, I definitely hope they continue on with the with these kinds of offers and experimenting with different packs. I personally didn't take a pull on it just because I had actually finished off Reverend Phlox with a citation from the campaign already, and Defensive Phlox, his bases are not great, and he doesn't really benefit from the 2nd star. Phlox Au Naturel I have at 1 out of 5, and I sort of figured, you know what, I don't really need to cultivate that particular skill set. But if I had not finished Reverend Phlox, I would have bitten their hand off to get that last star guaranteed, because he is excellent crew. And provided that the options are of a similar kind of quality to these, I can definitely see me going for a few of these in the future.
Yeah, in fact, as soon as the offer popped up, we started looking at possible counter crew to Defensive Phlox in Arena, because he really is the top shelf. You have Caretaker and Locutus, and he probably slots in right after them in terms of power usability. So yeah, we're looking at counters. Someone who doesn't share the skills, so Ahmed with either Commander did Beverly Crush or whatever. So the boys started running different copies in Gauntlet and comparing notes, and we'll see if there's a big bad wall in a few days when people haven't leveled up and start the new Gauntlets or not. But for a 1st star on him, or even Reverend Phlox is a great Voyager with a sliver of Gauntlet capability, a 1st star or finishing a crew for 1,500, I think that's a good deal. It's not for everyone, but a good deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And considering the fact that you can build up that amount of dilithium either by very, very carefully saving what you get from the campaigns or events, or just through, like a half month's worth of a monthly card, that could, for the right player and the right price point, even like a free-to-play player, that's a worthwhile investment.
Yeah, in fact, we were asking some of the free-to-play players in Discord, is anyone in your fleet biting on this offer? Because usually it's you get your shuttles and then crew slots, and then more crew slots, and then more crew slots. So I think the big selling point is that this is a guaranteed, going into it, what you're going to come out with. So
And that was the nice thing. It wasn't just you might get one of these. It was no, you're getting one. You know, this is kind of a bit of an antithesis, but what they've offered before, really.
Yeah, I think the closest thing we've had to that was the Honor sale for a while ago, where they had, you'd spend 10k and you just get a guaranteed gold legendary every time. But even then, it was a case of you could potentially get, I don't know, like Mariachi Q, Chang, and Cartwright, potentially. You could very easily get stuff settled or something like that. But here, there's a case of, it's almost similar to an Honor Hall situation, where it's a case of these crew are in this place for this price point for this amount of time, guaranteed. Which one do you want?
Yeah. And even Au Natural, if you've the one that's missing from your collection, even he's respectable.
Yeah, no, you could do a lot worse than cultivating that particular skill set, even if he's one of the lesser impressive ones now.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, moving on, let's have a chat about the Tuesday pack. So it was a very, from what I think, a fan-popular character from the later series. It was Sinister Picard's eye patch and all, terrible French accent riding his arena profile. A very strong entry as well.
Yeah, no, the card art, for one, is definitely on point. Looks great. I don't know if I would ever use him in Gauntlet, because I don't think he's got any ranked pairs, but I would certainly love to see him.
He's not in any top 20.
I would love to see him in Gauntlet just to be reminded, oh yeah, that card does exist and he looks fabulous. Skill set is a bummer, but it was kind of what we were going to expect from a card like that. Picard doesn't, with a few minor variations, he's not going to vary outside of that skill set. That being said, if you're going to go for this skill set, you could go for a lot worse options.
Okay, so for the longest time, we've been talking Crossbow Picard from Starship Mine, the episode, because you could work in engineering, security, maybe medical, something. He could really be just the art of him loading the crossbow,
Well, the weird thing was that Picard at Eladril has med for some reason.
He does.
Yeah, he does. For 3-star.
Well, I
not as
suppose
important,
he's trying to stop a dying man from dying.
Yeah. So yeah, they can
if
find
Quark
any
can
excuse.
Have med, Picard can have a better med.
Yeah, but still, yeah. So Command Sec Dip, it's very, very common selection. However, he packs a punch. Is that still worth considering?
Yeah, no, like similar voyage power to his like I'd say big brother, Picard #1. And new #1 Picard Sec base, which if you want to hedge your bets and you want to try and guess at a Picard Mega, which I think would be a pretty solid guess, like he'd be I'd rather him than Elnor if you're going for Picard Sec bases.
Yeah, Picard has had curiously few events throughout timelines. I don't think he's had one this year, but he sits at 9 variant events when a lot of other characters have 15, 16. And so I would have expected it to bump up by now. Maybe it will in the future. Probably it will in the future. But, event futures when it comes to this game and this company are at your own risk.
Yeah, I think a discussion. We'll see what happens with the next Mega, as whether is the the Voyager time and again, before and after. I'm always getting those two confused. Whether that's going to include Voyager crew, or whether they'll do the original series just Bridge crew, or will it be a limited pool? Will it just be anyone with the hidden Void tag or not?
I'm of the opinion it's probably going to be Bridge crew, just because even if you just made it just Voyager only, that's a pretty wide pool. That's got to be like at least 200, 300 crew now.
Is it really? I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, so I would guess either Bridge crew, or they're going to try and find some kind of trait to tie them all together. Something resourceful will be the trait.
Yes.
Like that's how
organic.
That's how back All Starfleet crew will get a bonus in this Mega.
Gosh,
like,
yeah,
okay.
can you imagine?
No, just cast variants. That's it.
All 3 of them.
Apparently it's 148 Voyager crew, according to chat.
148. I mean, it's a lot of God.
No, actually, this upcoming event. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead, but Romantic has 119. And I think with the other variants, we're up to 130 bonus crew-ish, which would be, I believe that's the record. I think the previous one was the Disco Mega end of last year. So
yeah, that's a fair point.
They're showing they're not terribly afraid of these bigger bonus pools.
You know,
So
it's just the megas, which are the ones that everyone angles for. We're not quite sure because they've been going with certain skills. Oh, sorry, that was my window.
Do you live under the
someone's really
subway there?
They keep on shifting the rule set. You know, first it was racial, and then it was you'd have your Klingon or your Andorian events, and then it was show megas with Disco and then TOS, and then now it's Trey megas mixed in with those, and it's very interesting. We kind of can't tell unless you get like 4 on the trot that this is a trend, and I think we over here at the Big Book have been sort of been going, well, you never know when the trend will end for like the last 10 megas. You know,
Coming to you live. It's a new trend.
So,
yeah. So, speaking of next event, let's move ever so slightly forward with today's 24-hour warning into our romantic event with, what was it, did you say 119 crew coming up?
119 romantic plus other variants.
And for those that have frozen Delta Flyer Kim getting back out because he counts for it. But so this is going to be quite a hot event crew. A hot event as it were, purely for the amount of bonus pool and for. Let's talk a little bit about Determined Paris, who's surprisingly not as bad as we thought he was going to be. Despite, again, like Sinister Picard, common skill set, but...
Well, I was going to actually say, it's very interesting that you would have the direct of like number 6 Voyager in the portal, and then almost immediately after you put in the number 13 Voyager as a potentially free event reward. It's kind of an interesting sort of, I don't know, it's a case of, I doubt that they planned it that way. Maybe they did. But it's very interesting that they're offering these different Voyage things, the same skill set almost. And it's, I don't know, it's interesting. I don't know if I'll be gunning for him just because I haven't got the tokens, but he would be there are worse gets, certainly.
I think anyone...
I was crossing my fingers just for a little bit of med, since Paris variants. He has like 4 or 5 with med, but...
Yeah, he was a nurse.
Yeah.
It is what it is. If you like him, get him. If you don't, don't.
Yeah.
So for those that don't know the episode he comes from, Auto, it's your time.
Yes, I was tasked with rewatching Prophecy, season 7, episode 14, where he comes from. So, yeah, it's B'Elanna's pregnant in it, so that's the whole. That's at the end of the show there. So yeah, we thought we'd go over, time permitting, these shows where these crew come from, and remember the good old times back before Discovery killed our livestock and burned our crops. So the episode starts out with Voyager Under Siege. Another great movie, by the way. Colm Meaney stars in that. Miles O'Brien. So Voyager's under siege by a cloaked vessel, and it turns out to be an old D7 style Klingon attack cruiser. They figure out it's one of the older ones. They can scan through the cloak. So I was thinking maybe some temporal shenanigans is afoot. But so they knock them out of commission and they hail them. And Captain Kolar answers, and he thinks the Klingon Federation are at war. So that's his provocation for attacking. And so she has him beam aboard because she happened to have a Klingon serving aboard, the only one in the entire Delta Quadrant. I will meet your chief engineer. I was getting, what is that terrible TNG season 1 episode? No vaccine, no Lieutenant Yah.
Code of Honor.
Yeah.
He's a big step up from that, but that's the sort of vibe I was getting.
Oh boy.
Getting shot in the head is a big up for from that.
That's true. So he beams on board immediately to meet with a very pregnant B'Elanna. And with all the subtlety and tact of a Klingon, he says, "You're with child. Did you conceive during the holy month of Nepok?" And I had flashbacks to when 7 was watching Paris and B'Elanna's mating rituals and cataloging them. So
there is no one at Deck 9 who is not aware that you are having intimate relations.
She just pokes around the corner.
Was...
Yes, they were. Yes.
So she very much appreciated the
3 minutes. That's all it took.
So Kolar beams back to his ship and he starts talking with the other Klingons, and they're reciting scripture and the scroll, and they're convinced that B'Elanna's unborn child is the savior of them all. Don't ask me how that works. So in order to get back on Voyager and to the child, they fake a warp. No, they didn't fake. They triggered a warp core breach to blow up their ship because nothing says honorable like deception. So they get beamed on board. 204 Klingons beamed on board at once. Is that? I thought they had like limits to the transport.
Yeah, I think that's a
Six at
plot.
time, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a plot thing, isn't it? It's like when they want, they're like, we can only beam 3 at a time, and other times, no, they're all here. They're fine. Yeah.
Fine, don't worry about it. Didn't you know that Klingons just have a lot of... You know what? It would actually make sense for Klingon ships to have a higher transport capacity, because guess what? They want to run through those decks slaughtering people with batless. get those people in.
So in Janeway's ready room, she confronts Captain Kolar and says she has evidence that they faked, well, not faked, that they set their own self-destruct. So he admits to it. He explains the story. They've been traveling for 100 years. And this holy scroll that they found says they will find the Kuvamach, the savior of their people. So Janeway goes to her bridge officers and explains what happened. And we get a good Paris quote, who says, I was hoping our daughter would be special, but I never dreamed she'd turn out to be the Klingon Messiah. So B'Elanna smacks him and says, that's not funny. So they decide, well, we're stuck with the Klingons. We'll double up our sleeping arrangements and see what happens. So we cut to the mess hall with Klingons everywhere, eating, drinking, being merry, as they do. Neelix is totally getting into it, by the way. Captain, you must try the gach. It turns out the Klingons love Neelix's cooking, so that's all it takes to make
The ironic twist, if there's going to be any culture that loves Neelix, it's the Klingons.
He does have that Klingon Neelix variant.
That's true,
He
yeah.
fits in well with them.
Yeah. When he's programmed to.
Yeah.
As soon as that chip's removed, like, oh, okay.
So a fight breaks out. Neelix tries his best Klingon impression by breaking it up and yelling at them, you shouldn't quarrel over your food. So they grab him and throw him to the side. A good bit of slapstick comedy. And they keep brawling, and Ensign Kim, young Ensign Kim, grabs one of the female Klingons and yells at her, and which, of course, arouses her. And she says to him, you have a fiery spirit. You'll make a worthy mate. So, fade to black.
And any actual human being in real life would be like, sure.
Yeah.
But Kim is
No, it's
Harry
Kim,
Kim,
isn't it? Yeah.
therefore his sex drive is all over the place.
He's got 7 on one
Ensigns
side.
Ensigns aren't allowed to have a sex drive. That's in the Starfleet handbook.
Yes, right.
So Neelix, in the next scene, strolls into Tuvok's quarters, like he's not even there, throws his books, bags on the ground, puts his feet up. What a day! He's relaxing after feeding hundreds of ravenous Klingons, and Tuvok is giving him a stare like, what the hell are you doing here? So he says, we're bunkmates. Didn't you know you were the only one left who didn't have a roommate, so you're stuck with me. And Tuvok says, you should have consulted me. And Neelix says, we're such close friends, I knew you wouldn't mind. So he starts singing one of the Klingon drinking songs that he learned and zoom in on Tuvok's face. So in the next scene, Taurus is in engineering, finishing her shift. She walks outside to the hallway, and there's all the Klingons there ready to ambush the Kuvamach's mother and worship her as they do. So she has to beam out of their emergency transport to Paris's quarters. And as she tries to relax, Janeway walks in and tells them there's a hunger strike brewing, and the Klingons won't eat until she comes and addresses them as the mother of the Kuvamach. So she goes to the shuttle bay where they're all holed up chanting and, torch fire burning. So it's very...
The typical cargo bay filled with the rural people.
Yeah, like up the long ladder
Yeah.
with all the sheep and
You want
goats.
the Klingons or the Irish? You get one. If you're lucky.
Bloody Irish again.
So they notice B'Elanna there and her very smooth ridges. And they start arguing about it. And they see she's not fully Klingon. And they call her child a mongrel child. So soon to be determined, Paris steps up and says, take it easy. The Klingon asks, who are you? He says, I'm the father of that mongrel child. More human blood. The Kuvamach is not even half Klingon. So that's enough to scare the Federation folks away. leave the room to let the Klingons argue amongst themselves. But Captain Kolar chases after them and says, "Look, I don't know if you're the mother of the Savior or not, but this is an opportunity to end our wasteful 100-year journey. So just play along, and finally we can settle somewhere and be at rest." So we go back to the sick bay, where Kim walks into the doctor's office with a very noticeable bite mark on his cheek. And he says he cut himself shaving, which Doc knows is
yeah.
So he writes him a prescription to have intimate relations with a member of an alien species. And he says you have two options, kill her or mate with her. So back in the A story, Kolar has gotten through to B'Elanna too.
That's not the A story.
That's true. Neelix usually is A story material. So back in the A story, Kolar gets through to B'Elanna, convinces her to play along. So she's in the mess hall with all the other Klingons. She's in full Klingon garb, and she's telling raucous war stories, and there's giant platters of greasy meat, bones clattering on the floor, and there's mugs of Warnog and Klingons belching, and, good old-fashioned Klingons getting along.
Good old Christian fun.
And so in the middle of these war stories, she tries to convince them subtly to settle on this planet. There's a new planet coming up. It's like the Klingon homeworld, Surely you'll be happy there. So one of the belligerent Klingons steps up and says, "You talk a good game, but do we think you're just a mouthpiece for Kolar?" And he says, "Are you Kolar's puppet in the bedchamber as well?" And so that irks determined Paris again. "Watch it." Klingon says, "You see how he hides behind his female? It is also written that the father of the Kuvamach will be an honorable warrior. Would an honorable warrior refuse a challenge?" Paris says, "I haven't refused any challenge. I haven't made one." So Tigreth, this belligerent Klingon, challenges Paris to battle to the death. And soon we'll get, hopefully, determined Paris. So in the next scene, it's Paris, B'Elanna, and Janeway in the conference room arguing about Paris accepting this challenge. And he says, "Wasn't the point of all this to get them to believe that B'Elanna's the savior and get them off the ship? Besides, what makes you so sure I would lose the challenge?" And B'Elanna goes, "Oh, please." Rolls her eyes. So they bring in the Klingons, and Janeway has to play referee. She goes, "There will be no death matches aboard my ship." So they agree to use blunted batleths. And instead of killing their opponent, they just have to knock them down 3 times. So Tigreth says, "I'll see you on the field of battle." So in the next scene, back to the A story with Neelix. He's walking the corridors, and all of a sudden he hears psst behind him, and he looks in. Kim is crawling out of a Jeffries tube. He's hiding from the Klingon woman, Officer Chirega. "Well, what's wrong with that?" And Kim goes, "She wants to mate." "Oh, you're a lucky man," Neelix says. He's always up for a little Klingon, boot knocking. So sure enough, Officer... Hey, that'd be good for his Good Morning Voyager show. That's a good segment for him. So sure enough, Officer Chirega comes up behind them, and Neelix looks at Kim. He says, "Play along." So he starts throwing Kim against the bulkhead. "If I catch you eating more than your share again, I'll cut it out of your belly." And so he looks at me, goes, "Run." So Kim turns around and runs away. And Neelix very cockily looks around behind him at Chirega. Her eyes, she's making the fuck me eyes. She's looking at me like he's a big man on campus now, right?
Careless Whisper is playing.
They start growling at each other. So finally we get to determined Paris, the next scene. They are in the holodeck.
You mean we cut away from them, absurdly having sex into bed?
3 minutes later, we put the little loading screen. So in this big holodeck cave, and those Federation officers and Klingon warriors lining the walls, Paris is in his determined Paris Klingon garb with the batleth. B'Elanna holds him the batleth. Like the girl at the race cars ready to wave the white flag, the checkered flag, for them to start the race. So they start fighting, going back and forth. And we get the best line of the episode from Determined Paris. Tigreth says, "I see fear in your eyes, human." And Paris says the only Klingon I'm afraid of is my wife after she's worked a double shift. So Tigreth takes Paris to school. I mean, he's knocking him around and spinning his bat'leth like a pro. Suddenly starts running out of gas and he falls down, collapses to the floor, and we think he's dead. So in the next scene, he wakes up in sickbay, and we learn that it is the Nuret, some kind of disease that affects older Klingons who aren't fortunate enough to die in battle. And that the disease only affects other Klingons. So when they brought it on board, the doctor finds out after scanning Taurus that she and the baby both have it. So in terms of preserving a little bit of time for the rest of the show, you'll have to see the episode if you want to know how it ends. So we don't see any more determined Paris.
Click this link if you want to see more. Donate £5 to your...
Just have an auto link into the Prime or Netflix of your region. 10 out of 10 recap.
Yes, yeah, there's some good response from chat as well. I think we've hit a few fans of your Klingon accent there. I think we need to petition you to be on the new show, definitely.
Oh, just wait. Hey, if we talk about a Gowron variant, I'll do the crazy eyes.
I think we're gonna. Oh, I can't wait.
Honor to you
And your house.
Love Gowron.
And we have our significantly less interesting counterpart.
Yes. Let's move on to Vagrant Braxton from the Time Traveling Voyager, another Voyager episode, Time Traveling episode, featuring one Sarah Silver. No, I think it was Sarah McSilver. It's just Silverman. That's the one. Yes, Sarah Silverman. The most 90s episode ever. Definitely.
Yeah, no, like Janeway's like blazing white power alone kind of sets it.
Leisure suit, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Shoulder pads. There's a great line when I think it's Tuvok mentions they could have beamed down in their Starfleet uniforms and no one would have noticed.
Somewhere behind Janeway, Chakotay's just sweating. Just going, can you wear that on the bridge?
From that episode, we have disguised Tuvok, disguised Chakotay, and Sarah Silverman, who is, what's her name? Rain Robinson.
Yeah.
Rain Robinson. How can you forget that lovely Marvel-esque double alliteration name?
Sarah Silver for Rain Robin.
There's very little to say about Vagrant Braxton.
Yeah, he's not great.
It's something when I look at him and I think, wow, you're Solok, but worse. Because Solok at least has 2 collections.
Yeah, actually, we were discussing a tier for the big book. I think we said 8 or 9 or whatever. And I stormed in and said, if it's anything other than 10, you'll have to fight me. So
we could check. I might change then. I thought kind of like I think you guys usually take 1 or 2 days to sort of mull it over, and I thought, I need something for the show. Maybe I'll leave that out next time. But yeah, but even so, let's take from perspective of say like the free to play crowd or new players, and and you see this and you think, right, maybe I can get to 130 for a first time Psi Command crew. What would we say? Is he going to improve anyone's voyage over anyone that's in the portal already?
I mean, let's see what his voyage rank is. Number 630. I think you would probably be better off using some green crew.
I was going to say, I need to look at that actually. I need to see if there's actually any blues.
It's a matter of if you get 3 or 4 stars, stars win out almost always versus raw stats. So there's that. But if you're looking at long-term potential, I mean, very few events, no collection, no voyage ability, no arena. Even the traits are pretty dire. You have temporal prisoner or temporal agent, who's had 1 event, and then survivalist which is okay, but they've had their mega. So
and a mega, and I think standalone as well. So maybe another one down the road, but maybe another one for temporal agent. But it's a very small bonus pool. That's doesn't look good, and it's like there's not very many other variants you can do for Braxton apart from at the end of that episode when he's captain again. But again, it's just a slightly different actor, and I can't really see much mileage in this particular variant.
It is interesting to see that we have 2 Braxtons either end of the scale. The number 1 Braxton, and then I suppose his Vagrant option being bottom of the barrel is quite appropriate, really. Almost wonders if it's deliberate. You got to think someone. Oh, hang on. Sorry, my headphones just are running out of battery. Yeah, you got to wonder if maybe DB are thinking about this and what they wonder when they put stats in.
I would like to think that's the case. I somehow doubt it. But yeah, so and the existing 4-star I think would be a considerably better investment for most players overall because you got actual collection value, main cast, Undercover O'Brien for those of you who haven't looked at your event notifications for tomorrow. Not an amazing crew by any metric, but still like a pretty solid one overall, especially for events and collections. Like much better than Braxton.
Something that we sort of jumped over with Paris is that he's in the Diplomat collection.
Oh, yes.
And I don't know if you got Diplomacy from our recap or not, swinging Batleths, but nevertheless, he's in there. So right now it requires tons of golds to finish. And so you may as well pick one that gets events and has great voyage numbers. So if that's the focus of yours, that's another plus in his favor.
Yeah, no, like, I think Braxton's basically like a cherry on top. If you can rank, then getting 4 copies of Undercover O'Brien or potentially a copy of Determined Paris, that's a much better prospect.
But I think in future, when we talk about sort of the behold options, he's not going to be on anyone's radar for any particular reason. No,
unless you finished all of your purples or he ends up on a campaign track or whatever. That's not particularly.
Well, yeah, I can see that. The homeless one. Who would be his contemporary on a campaign track with Vagrant Braxton that isn't Captain Braxton?
I would, for one thing, I would buy that campaign. Who would be a good? Who's homeless?
I would say Prisoner O'Brien, but he's another super rare. That would be a nice match. But
need someone appropriately homeless looking. Don't worry, I'll think about it.
We'll come back to it. Okay, let's move on. So we've talked about the event, and I think what with Paris being what he is, I think we can expect, and the large pool, we can expect a fair amount of competition for this next one. So moving on, let's have a chat about the latest patch notes and the latest things that have come in literally yesterday, as it were. With the ship battle changes, most notably, the ship interface UI has had a change, and it is a lot nicer, if no less important. But yeah, there have been some major ship battle changes that could very actually well affect events in the future. So for those that don't know, the 5.20 patch that came out added a few functions to ship battles. So first off, you can skip the animations for the before and after of the actual battle. Also, you can double the speed. There's a 2x speed and an auto mode, which is the most interesting thing about this, which means the computer on your ship will automatically fire the crew in a certain order.
It will fire the actual crew at the other ship, yes.
It'll just load them in.
That's what's actually happening. You think it's just them at a console, like, doing their tactical stuff, but no, they actually just fire straight at torpedoes.
I've just been told there's a 3x speed too. Was that right?
It's true, yeah.
Oh, okay, I didn't see that one.
It's super fast.
Bloody hell.
Boy, journalistic integrity these days is just in the toilet.
Really doing our research. Skimming all sorts of documents. So yeah, what do you think? I mean, I can see skirmishes for one being a lot more higher scoring.
Well, obviously this is going to be on Auto's area of expertise because he is the skirmish master. But for me personally, I think this kind of shifts skirmishes over to being a bit more like galaxies because they're a bit more now about raw chronotons rather than having the endurance to sit there and tap it out. And I know, like I think you're going to see the actual scores like balloon. Like you're going to go, from maybe a 3 million VP up to maybe like 6 million or 12 million. Like you're going to see that gulf go even further. But because everyone is on the same playing field, I don't know if necessarily the actual gulf between players will change that much. It's going to come down to chronotons, I feel, more than anything else. But
definitely, I think it's going to be a sort of a first day splurge, and then sort of a lot of the first couple of events, people tweaking their rosters for the auto mode, and then I think we'll see something that happened similar when the Kraken took domination, and that people just shoot off.
And now, first of all, I'm gratified that they decided to name the mode after me. But,
tribute is where tribute due.
I believe the priority order is when an ability comes off from the initialization period, it will use it. And then the next one, it goes left to right. If the next ability has an active ability like damage or crit bonus or whatever, it will fire it. If it doesn't, and it's the same, like if you already have attack active, it won't activate another one and just waste it. But it does, it's kind of dumb. The auto ability will fire at cloaked vessels, burn through your instant damage. So in arena, it's a little tricky. You may not want to use it all the time or at all. Or if you pick certain ships, try to avoid the cloak maybe, so you don't waste your attack. But people are going to tweak it, and we'll know more in a few days or a week, whatnot. But for skirmishes, and I like the change for arena. I blasted through 10 arena battles today in like 1 minute.
And in fact, I will bring while you're talking, I'll bring up my alt, and I will do a little bit of. No, that's the scanner. Where's he gone? I'll do a little bit of a really bad arena because the crew is not very good on that at all. So I'll flick through this while you're talking about it.
Yeah, top tier gameplay.
No, we'll go for a nice bit of commander here. But yeah, if we boot it up and you get the option. So tap to skip, and then we can go 1, 2, 3, auto on.
Oh, there you go. Very nice.
Blazes through. What a winner! Fucking pro. Just there it is. No effort, mate. Rank up 99,000 already. Like, don't even try.
Can't touch this.
Oh, let's try this one. Yeah, sorry. Carry on while I flick through this.
Yeah, so it's an interesting change because it is gonna, because a lot of the time in Big Book notes we'll mention, how big of a gulf 6 to 8 to 10 to 12 seconds on an instant damage crew can actually be. And that's why a crew like Garth of Izar or Killy have been so dominant, especially because on a Kraken you get that down to 4 seconds. But when you can tap, and then it's 3 times speed, animations are off, suddenly 6 seconds is down to 2? Suddenly 8 seconds is down to 3, and then...
Don't do math on stream. You never win.
I failed my math table, it's fine. And it's a sliding scale, and everything's being compressed down. And I think in the future we might see some of these crew, especially someone like Killy, who doesn't have any kind of voyage applicability, might end up sliding a little bit down just in overall usefulness because she's still the quickest gun in the book, but now everyone's a quicker gun, as it were.
Yeah, I find it quite a bit ironic that Polywater Yar, who was 400 or 375% damage at 2 seconds, was completely nerfed, and there was a big hullabaloo about that. And now we have, with 3x speed, everyone is 400 damage at 2 seconds.
Definitely.
Speaking, yeah.
For skirmishes, there's a lot of layers to this. If you're just someone who wants to hit thresholds and out, great. You're going to do them lightning quick now. Like Star said, in terms of the endurance, there's no... before the intro and outro and initialization times, you could, if you're on a computer, tab out and type something, or if you're on your phone, look away and do whatever. And now you kind of have to watch it all the time if you want to be, optimal and make sure you're maximizing your time spent. So chronotons, how big your stockpile is a lot bigger factor. How much time you spend, and I think someone in chat said the elephant in the room is macros, which I don't think we're qualified to discuss, but
yeah, I think
let's cross our fingers that someone in charge is keeping an eye on that, because really the time you have to spend focused is only limited by your chronotons, and there's no 10-second, 15-second breaks in between. You're literally just tapping all the time now because everything is so fast.
Yeah, it's going to mean that our bond watching during skirmish means we're going to be basically like while we're watching. Otherwise, there's no time to type in commentary or anything like that.
Yeah, and look, I've just done all 10, and that was 2 minutes.
Yeah. As a gut reaction, I kind of hate it for skirmishes, because skirmishes were more relaxing for me. You could tap whatever every few seconds and pay attention to other things. And now, like I said, you want to maximize its full attention. So I'm not a big fan of that change. It has its pluses, obviously. So
yeah.
Some people hate it, some people love it, and I think most will probably like it. Less time spent on a mobile game, said the guy who's doing the stream about the mobile game.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like, I feel like the very first skirmish we have with it, we might end up seeing it getting tweaked.
I wonder if the
honestly wouldn't
rewards
be
will get nerfed a bit as well, because they're going to be coming in faster.
possible. I personally would be okay with this is like an option that's enabled for, for like a campaign and for arena, but not for skirmish. I'd actually be okay with that because that would mean that skirmish kind of stays where it is while still having the quality of life improvements. But I don't know. I feel like maybe that's a bit too tailored to how I personally play and how I know auto plays, where it's like this is like a bit of a hit to how we do these events. But for most people, as you said, it's going to be a nice little quality of life improvement.
Okay, I think we've waxed rhetoric about that and as much as we can until we start seeing some results. So I think once we get a bit more data in, we can start saying, right, sort of people like, mirrors, who we're going to move up and down, or who we're going to sort of think about, actually, these are better for the auto mode when we get a little bit more information.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So next up, we're going to have sort of a very brief chat. We have the very fantastic, in my opinion, news that there's going to be a new Star Trek series with fan favorite Anson Mount coming back as Captain Spock. So Captain Spock. Captain Pike. I'm trying to say Spock and Pike at the same time. Strange New Worlds is coming in the next, hopefully, couple of years, and we are definitely going to see some events and some hype due to around existing characters and hopefully some nice new cards to be much more in the future. Seeing on history and how, hopefully, if timelines last that long, which we are due to expect it would, based on what it does. How do we feel about existing cards and the event potential therein?
Well, it means that cards like, say, like Relax Number One, who otherwise would have been consigned to the disco dustbin, as it were, if those megas stop, suddenly means that, hey, the 3 out of 4 that I currently have in my roster, maybe she's worth citing up, because she can have variants, she can have actual, almost guaranteed event work, although, given how things have panned out with Disco and Picard, it might be a slightly different situation, but she's going to have stuff down the road. And that is a nice little value add, especially for people like myself who are big fans of Pike, who make sure to get the old gold Christopher Pike and the New Eden Pike, who was also actually really quite good Voyager in his own right. It's a nice little bit of value add. Like, Spock is evergreen. You can always get a Spock. Any Spock will be helpful to you in the long run, but this is just a nice little value add for people who wanted to go for the Pike and Number One and weren't quite sure how disco bonuses are going to pan out for them in the future because they're not technically bridge crew. But it's nice to have as much Star Trek as possible. Like, there's always worry about oversaturation. I understand that because you don't want to get to the point where you're at Enterprise levels of this is the same plot as a TNG episode from 10 years ago, but worse. But I feel like this is going to be a different enough project from the other two because they mentioned that it's going to be a lot more episodic in nature compared to Picard and Discovery serialized storytelling structure. That I feel like it's going to be quite nice and fresh. Quite how long it's going to last, they haven't said, but I would anticipate at least 2 or 3 series.
Yeah, I think the popularity of the cast itself will lend the series a due chance if the first series isn't that great, and then
nowadays, even if your first series isn't that great, as long as you get enough viewers, you'll still get signed on for a second series halfway through the first one anyway. Nowadays, not much else really to say about it apart from the fact
so it's a quick little section just to mention that this is coming, and I think this will. Hopefully there'll be something timelines relevant towards it. And don't pack your Pikes and Spocks. Well, don't pack your Pikes and Number Ones away just yet. Keep them out. Okay, moving across. We've got a small feature Mr. Auto is going to give to us about, why don't you lead us through what you're going to inform us of?
Well, actually, this is part of the, we take viewer submitted questions every week.
Oh, is this part of that? Oh, I've mucked up.
No, it's my own long ramble because you gave me the okay and you never will again.
Shall I mention the question? Or do you want to say?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do the question. So this is from a guy on the forum, sent me a message, Madman1 from the Wicked Realm Disruptor Beam forums, whatever they're called now. He says, if you're looking for future questions, then what about your 3 most overlooked legendaries that are worth taking and citing up? It might be interesting to see if you all choose the same ones, or if different and the different reasoning involved.
Yeah, so when I started looking for my answer to this question, I came across a little subset of crew that I thought would be, well, it struck me as interesting. I thought it would be interesting to talk about, and that would be Sexi, not sexy, Sexi, Security Science Voyagers.
Which some of them are sexy.
And that used to be a skill combo that a lot of people talked about as, I have trouble with this, and then all of a sudden became all things medicine, med-eng, med-command, etc. So on the topic of Sexi, a little guessing game for the viewers at home. If you know how long it's been since the last 3-skill Sexi crew has been added to the game. Wrong, it was 8 months ago and 3 days. Commander Ari Bin Bem, which, by the way, I watched his episode. That was my first animated series episode. So
how was it?
Yeah.
I stopped halfway through.
It's an acquired taste.
It was good. Yeah. And he's had no events to date. He's outside the top 200 Voyagers. He's really more of a gauntlet crew. So I look back further, and you have to go back over 13 months to Gladiator Spock for the last meaty, beefy, substantial Sexi Voyager. So, Idle, if you can pull up the voyage pairs. Oh, I guess it's already up there.
I'm way ahead here.
This is the amount of security and science that a crew contributes to their voyage, not their overall score. And at the top of the list, we see the vaunted, esteemed Gary Seven. Everyone knows him. Everyone loves him. He's not exactly underrated, but I will stump for him now because I think he's a great crew if you need what he offers. So he is the number 2 overall Voyager. And to continue the guessing game, I'll let you guys redeem yourselves. I have a cat walking between my legs. Oh dear.
Where does
Is
he
Mom
rank?
feeding you? So he ranks number 2 overall. So to continue the guessing game, the number 2 Sexi crew, what overall rank would you reckon they have? Wrong, it is Gladiator Spock. Rank 102. That means there's a 100 crew gap between the number 1 option and the number 2 option. That's huge. In fact, the only skill pair that has a bigger gap would be Eng Med, which is its own sad little tale. So beyond that, you have Awaiting Burnham, 139, Saru at 180, and those 4 names account for all the Sexi crew in the top 200. There's only 4 of them. So for some perspective, Command DipSec, everyone's favorite skill set, has 50 crew in the top 200 Voyagers. So what ends up happening is when people want to build their Sexi Voyages, they sort of have to cobble them together with crew who have that as their first and third or second and third skill. Some names like, the pack last week, Dareth and Fury Cass both have it. You have former campaign crew Proto Barclay, Mir Jean-Luc Picard, who was also a mega crew. Survivalist Kirk was a global gift. Armis and Locutus are both gauntlet crew. So you can cobble together Sexi, but if you really want to focus on that with citing 1 or 2 crew, it can be difficult to do. So if we look back at these voyage pair ranks, the next 4 crew under Gary 7 are all 2-skill crew, which you really shouldn't be using on voyages unless their name is Dr. Hugh Culber. And that's sort of its own discussion. But usually if you're using 2-skillers on voyages, that means that it's a good place to target to upgrade your roster because you have a huge lack in those skills. Now, if we set discovery events to one side for a second, we talked about will they not continue. Those 4 crew have a combined 29 events. So they only average 6.5 in total. So they're not really voyage crew, they're not really event crew, and you don't really want to cite them. So we're starting to see the big hole in Sexi. Now, before I talk about number 6 and 7 on the list are jewels in a bed of fog, if you will. Look at all the terrible names below them, like Trelane, Gangster Spock, Admiral Janeway, and they have their uses for sure. There's utility between arena, gauntlets, events, etc. But their overall power level for base and voyages is really quite low, and they're not citation candidates exactly, which leaves number 6 and number 7 on that list. Let's talk first about Burnham, if you want to pull up Away Team Burnham's stats.
Ta-da!
Now, when I'm looking for a crew to cite, as the question is asking about, you really want to look for, as Devanani Ral would say, an edge, something that a crew offers that no one else can or that not many other people can. So Burnham and Gladiator Spock's edge are, one, that they're sex-sci crew, and a lot of people look at the overall rank and they go, yeah, I want to cite that. But when there's really such a dearth of that skill set, that makes them more valuable than the raw numbers. Edge number 2 would be, funnily enough, her base, which is not great. It's 1192 with bonuses, but it's 160 points better than the next Burnham option and 280 points better than the best super rare tactical Michael Burnham. And edge number 3 is events. Now, if we're setting Disco aside, to be fair to all the crew involved, even without the 16 Disco events we've had so far, she still had 20 events. A lot of those are from traits. She's also had 8 variant events, which are more than any other Disco crew. I think they top out at 5, Saru, Giorgio, and a couple others. So, I mean, she's the one you see on the promotional materials with her long flowing hair, and they're never going to get away from Burnham at all. She's going to get plenty of events. You don't have to worry about that. And the same holds true for Gladiator Spock, who has better voyage numbers. That variant best base sec is huge. I mean, there's not a lot of sec among Spocks. So he's 420 points better than Gangster Spock, who, if you have immortalized him, good for you. And he's 600 points better than the top super rare Khalifi Spock. So in terms of faction seeding, he's just going to dominate. He also has that third edge, the big event edge. 31 events to date, along with 11 traits. I believe Talk and Troy has the most with 13, but a lot of the Spocks have tons of traits, and a lot of them they haven't triggered yet. Not to mention, as we just talked about, how many TV show pies he has his fingers in between the original series, Disco, and now probably Strange New Worlds. So if I'm looking at underrated names of crew that you might want to cite, Gladiator Spock is top of my list. Burnham is close behind, and I'm going to cheat and say Gary 7, because even though he's not underrated, really the gap between him and the other options is just huge.
And with that thunderous applause, that's the most well-timed thump I've heard. No, thank you very much for your submission, Mr. Garters. I believe you have something for us. You wanted to talk about a couple of crew, or 3 crews.
I have a little something for us.
Something.
So my first candidate, I don't know if you want to bring him up, is actually Humbled Archer. He is, I think, the crew that I think gets brought up most in our sort of like our little Discord server. As I have this crew at 1 out of 5. Get me to cite him, basically. And every time I say do it, because I basically did it on kind of a dare from our compatriot Big, who's basically said, you do this and I'll do that, and then I can't remember what he cited, but I think it wasn't nearly, I don't think it probably paid off nearly as well as Archer did, because I happened to cite him just before, the pilot, Mega, I think, was it no pilot? No, it was before Archer actually got a few events of his own, and I think 1 or 2 of his traits triggered. And as the number 2 dip base, as like one of the few people who actually has like med command, even a small amount, a little edge of like gauntlet. I think he probably counts as a diplomat as well. I can't remember that off the top of my head, but he is a consistently underrated name, probably just because Archer in general just doesn't get a lot of events, so he doesn't get a lot of play. But he's a really good Voyager, good strong base. He'll make event shuttles for you if you don't have Sato or need of the dip seats, which almost everyone does these days. And just everyone I talk to is just like, but I don't want to. And guess what? You should, because even if dip is like the most common skill in the game, dip med command is a good skill set. it's very rare for someone like Archer to have that. You know, your best options for Archer Med are what Imprinted Archer, who's got a significantly worse Voyage score. And that actually sort of ties into my other two choices, which is that the kind of player I am, I like to accrue crew who have a unique skill among variants. So Archer has like the best med base of any Archer, for example, and my other two choices were Seeking Spock and Saboteur Garrick. Again, both of them are not like, you know, the best voyages in the world. They're not. I don't think they even break the top 50. But like Seeking Spock is the only Spock with med, and he kind of gets buried under a deluge of other psi base Spocks because there are a million of them. It is the most common still for them to have, but I don't know. I just love having that thing of this is the only card with that particular advantage. Even if it's a small edge, it just tickles a bit in the back of my brain that goes, yeah, that's good. It gets the serotonin going. And for a lot of people, you know what? That's better than an event win. You know, just that satisfaction of knowing, no, yeah, I've got this edge, yeah. And I don't know. I think he's just very, very, very good crew overall. It's just a case of because they don't have particularly standout, you know, like Seeking Spock, you look at him, it's like, oh, another Psi primary Spock. I can just ignore him. I've got him 1 out of 5. I'll get around to him eventually. You won't, but you should.
Yes.
And the same thing with like Saboteur Garrick, where I think he's dropped out of the top 100. If he debuted, I think I'm at like number 40. But between like his instant damage, a good amount of traits that could still hit, and just like, you know, consistent Garrick events, one collection, although it's not worth a particularly large amount, you could do worse than grabbing crew that have strong bases that are unique to their characters, that have abilities that will slot in where they want in like Gauntlet or Arena, and they just multifaceted crew are really important to have. It's nice to have your crew that are very good at one thing and one thing only, and they do it super well. But having jack of all trades definitely has like its advantages.
Yeah, and if I can just jump in before Idle gives us his picks, I think that's the hallmark of a growing roster. Early on, you have crew that do it all. I mean, you get your first mega crew, they will, you know, make your bed and make you lunch and call in sick to work for you so you don't have to go. But as your roster grows, it becomes more of a toolbox, and you need specific crew to do specific things. And even if they only do one thing on your roster, that still makes them worthwhile. So
cool. Thank you, guys. I think I'm going to do the cop-out answer here a little bit for my one, partly because I've spent so long prepping with the graphics. Maybe next week I'll have a better answer for a question. But I think my choice would be for, you know, all those crew that you've got, you know, and it's been a while now, all those crew you've got from campaigns, from megas, and they're sitting there, they're 4 or 5, and there are some jewels in there, and I think you should really sort of have a look over your roster, you know, people like Gloria, you know, good med for those that don't have a lot of med, and she has some utility and the collection bonus as well. Maybe setting up to 5 will get you, even if it's only like 100 honor and 200 crons for the collection bonus. There's just little somethings in there, so have a look over and just have a think, you know, who's worth a sight, just a little, just to push things up a bit, and you'd be surprised at the jumps for some crew between 4 or 5 and 5 or 5. There's quite a few leaps there that might actually benefit you. You just have to have a look.
So if I'm reading you rightly, and I think I am, this is the perfect time to cite my minuet.
How can I rewind this? Can I go back on that? Okay, some crew. Some crew. Okay, I think we're going to start wrapping things up here. I think we sort of covered everything we wanted to talk about today. There are some things we did want to talk about originally before the changes come in, but I think we'll push them forward. We've got plenty to talk about in the weeks ahead. But I'm going to play a quick game of Big Book Roulette with you guys, the same as last week. So, best of 3. Let's see. Where would you say Smuggler Cassidy Yates is? Actually, did I do that one last week?
I don't think you did.
No? Okay,
no.
We'll say no then if we can't remember.
I should know this because I wrote her note.
I'm going to say tier 8. Because we had sort of a baseline for Jury Rigger before it became too easy to complete, and all the hipsters moved on to Diplomat.
I'm gonna guess tier 7.
Point
Because
for
she has good
Auto.
voyage number.
Oh, sorry. 1-0.
Booyah!
I need to have like a soundboard with overkill. Right, let's go for. Let's play the roulette game. Dr. Anne Mulhall.
Ooh.
Was the number 1 side base. You should know this, or she's like your bombshell, right?
Hey, a little Diana Muldaur, you can't go wrong with.
I know Miranda Jones is more your speed,
our,
but
our soft rule of thumb is tier 5 and above are sort of daily use. You use them a lot, and since she doesn't get events for her base and her voyage has dropped quite a bit, I'm gonna guess 6. She's right on the borderline underneath.
keeps on guessing what I'm guessing. Am I allowed to guess the same tier?
You can guess the same
Yeah.
thing. I'll still get you.
I'm gonna guess tier 6 as well.
Tier 6. Correct. He is, but she is tier 6.
Yeah, because it's like, yeah, that base has declined. Her voyage is not great. Side command got shoved. You know.
Okay, last one for tonight. Age of Sail Riker.
I'm gonna guess 6 because he's got the vanity. His voyage score is trash. He's not a particularly good base, but I think we gave him points for at least being a very. I think I'm gonna go 6. Feels wrong.
Now, I'm old enough to remember when he was a top 40 Voyager. And everyone said his base sucks. You're overrating him. So I think we've moved him down over the year to, if we're using that same metric, probably I'll cop out and say tier 6, because if we tie, I win.
Oh, dirty tactics. Correct, tier 6, both of you. So, yes, the winner for this week is Auto. Excellent.
See, you're a big nerd than I am. You're the real nerd.
You know your own material. I think I'll try and mix it up next week and try something a little bit different and a bit more thought into it. But excellent. So thank you to Auto and Stars for coming and joining me again this week. Thank you everyone in the chat and everyone that's viewed. We'll be back again next week. If you want to rewatch, it'll be on the VOD on Twitch on here, and I'll also put it up on the YouTube channel, which you'll find in the link below. But if you've got any questions, send us a message on Discord, on the Timelines Discord, or on the forums. I will always respond. Anything new, but hopefully we'll see you next week. So say bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.